Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy my new stories every day. It was a typical Thursday morning when the first crack in my perfect world appeared. My wife Katie and I had been married for over a decade, and things were always solid between us. At least, that's what I thought. We had our routines, our shared life, and while there were the occasional rough patches, I never doubted her loyalty. She was my wife, after all, the mother of our 2 kids, my partner through thick and thin. But then something changed. Katie started to become distant. It wasn't obvious at first, just small things. She'd be glued to her phone during our family dinners, claiming she was responding to work emails. She'd make excuses to stay late at work more often than usual. I noticed her disappearing into the bathroom with her phone for extended periods of time, coming out with a vague smile. But I let it slide. I didn't want to be the paranoid husband, the guy who questions his wife over every little thing. So, I trusted her, even though something gnawed at the back of my mind. Maybe it was just the stress of her job, I convinced myself. She worked for a pool supply company, managing their accounts and overseeing the store. It was demanding, sure, but not enough to explain her recent behavior. A few weeks ago, we took a long overdue vacation to the mountains of North Carolina. It was supposed to be our time to reconnect, to enjoy the serenity of nature and leave the stress of daily life behind. We rented a cozy cabin near a small lake, surrounded by towering pines and distant mountains. The air was crisp, and the mornings were filled with the sound of birds and the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. It was perfect. But Katie wasn't herself. I tried to chalk it up to her being tired, maybe even just needing some space. But every time we were supposed to be relaxing together, she had her phone glued to her hand. During hikes, she'd fall behind to check her messages. At dinner, she'd spend more time staring at the screen than talking to me. It was frustrating. But I didn't want to spoil our trip with an argument. I let it slide again. It wasn't until the 3rd day that things took a darker turn. We were on a drive through the mountain roads, headed to a small town about an hour from our cabin. Katie suddenly asked if we could pull over at the nearest gas station. She needed to use the bathroom. We found a Wawa, and she hurried inside, leaving her phone on the seat next to me. That's when it happened. Her phone lit up, displaying a message from an unknown number. My stomach twisted as I stared at the screen. The message read, "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was incredible." I froze. The world around me seemed to shrink, the sounds of passing cars and distant voices fading into the background. My hand hovered over the phone, my heart pounding in my chest. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing. There had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was a mistake, a wrong number. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the case. I didn't have much time to think. Katie suddenly reappeared from the store, and I quickly put the phone back down, my hands shaking. She walked briskly toward the car, a look of panic on her face. The moment she saw the phone in my lap, her eyes widened, and she snatched it out of my hands. "Why do you have my phone?" she demanded, her voice sharp, defensive. "I wasn't doing anything," I stammered, trying to sound as calm as possible. It lit up, and I saw the message by accident. Katie's face flushed, and she shoved the phone into her bag, her hands trembling. "It's nothing," she muttered, turning her gaze away from me. "Just some spam. Don't make a big deal out of it." I nodded, even though my gut told me otherwise. Something was off, and now I couldn't shake the feeling that my wife was hiding something. For the rest of the drive, an uncomfortable silence hung between us. I kept my eyes on the road, but my mind was spiraling. Who was sending her those messages? Was it really just spam, or was there something more? The more I thought about it, the more suspicious I became. When we got back to the cabin that evening, I couldn't stop replaying the moment in my head. The message, the way she snatched her phone, her defensive tone. It all added up to something that wasn't good. But I wasn't ready to confront her just yet. I needed more proof, more clarity before I could accuse her of anything. So, I kept quiet. I let the rest of our vacation play out in awkward, strained silence, pretending everything was fine while I silently vowed to get to the bottom of this. The moment we got back home, I started digging. I waited for Katie to go to bed one night, and I logged into our phone account. I could see all the numbers she had been texting, and one number stood out. It wasn't local. In fact, it had a Virginia area code. That number had appeared dozens of times over the past few months, texts, calls, all of them long conversations, some happening late into the night. I didn't recognize it, and she had never mentioned knowing anyone from Virginia. I wasn't sure what to do next. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I also couldn't ignore what was staring me in the face. I ran the number through a reverse lookup website, and what I found only deepened my suspicions. It was a VoIP number, likely used to keep someone's identity hidden. Whoever this person was, they didn't want to be found. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if my marriage was unraveling right before my eyes. Every memory, every moment we had shared over the last few months seemed tainted. I thought about all the times she had stayed late at work, all the business trips she had taken. Had she been lying to me this whole time? I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been played for a fool. The next day, I made my decision. I was going to confront her, but not without proof. I needed to be sure. So, I installed a tracking app on her phone. It would run silently in the background, giving me access to her location and activity. If she was meeting someone behind my back, I'd know soon enough. For the next few days, I kept a close eye on her. Every time she left the house, I'd check the app, watching her location. At first, everything seemed normal, work, errands, the usual. But then, one evening, she told me she was going to meet a friend for drinks. I watched as her location pinged at a local bar, but then it disappeared for several hours. When she finally came home late that night, I could barely look at her. She kissed me on the cheek, pretending nothing was wrong, but I could see through the act now. The following morning, I made up my mind. It was time to follow her. The morning I decided to follow Katie, the guilt was already eating me alive. I wasn't proud of what I was about to do, but my heart had turned cold, hardened by the growing suspicion that my wife, the woman I had spent over a decade with, was lying to my face. I had to know for sure. The unknown was killing me, and I needed clarity, even if it destroyed me. Katie left the house around 7 p.m., claiming she was going out for drinks with a friend. It wasn't the first time she'd made that excuse, but tonight, I wasn't buying it. I had been watching her every move for days, and I could sense when something was off. She had been more careful lately, guarding her phone like a hawk, keeping her distance even when we were alone. It was as if she knew I was starting to catch on, but I didn't let on. I pretended everything was fine, played the loving husband, all the while waiting for my moment. I got into my car and stayed far enough behind so she wouldn't notice me tailing her. She drove toward the city, just like she said, but something felt wrong. My heart was racing, the steering wheel slick in my sweaty palms. Was I really doing this? Following my own wife, like some detective in a bad movie? The shame gnawed at me, but the need for answers overpowered it. I had to know. She didn't go to the bar she mentioned. Instead, her car pulled into a small, dimly lit parking lot behind a rundown motel. My stomach twisted. This was it. I parked across the street, hidden behind some bushes, and watched as Katie stepped out of her car, looking around nervously. She had dressed up, tight jeans, high heels, her hair done in that way she knew I liked. But tonight, it wasn't for me. A man stepped out of one of the motel rooms, and my world crumbled. He was tall, stocky, and wearing a leather jacket. His face was unfamiliar, but the way he touched her, pulling her close, kissing her, made my blood boil. They stood there for a moment, wrapped in each other's arms, and then disappeared into the motel room together. I couldn't move. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, but I felt paralyzed. I had half a mind to storm in there, pound on the door, and drag her out, demanding answers. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there in the dark, my mind racing through every possible scenario, every explanation she could give me, and none of them would be enough. After what felt like an eternity, I pulled out my phone and snapped a few pictures. I needed evidence. Not for anyone else, not for a lawyer or a divorce case, just for me. Proof that this wasn't some nightmare, that I wasn't losing my mind. I sat there for another hour, maybe two, before I finally saw them emerge. They kissed again, laughing like a couple of teenagers sneaking around. Then he walked her to her car, gave her one last kiss, and disappeared back into the motel. Katie drove off, and I let her go. I stayed in my car, feeling hollow, watching as her taillights disappeared into the night. I didn't follow her home. I couldn't. I needed to be alone, to process what I had just witnessed. I drove aimlessly for hours, my thoughts spinning out of control. How had it come to this? Where had things gone so wrong between us? We had a life together, a good one, or at least I thought we did. Two beautiful kids, a nice home, a comfortable life. But none of that seemed to matter anymore. All I could think about was that motel, that man, and the way she had kissed him like I didn't even exist. By the time I got home, the house was dark. Katie was already in bed, pretending like everything was fine. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, watching her sleep, and for a moment, I felt like a stranger in my own life. How long had this been going on? How many nights had she snuck off to meet him while I sat at home, clueless, trusting? I slipped into bed beside her, my body tense and rigid, unable to relax. I could hear her soft breathing, so peaceful, so calm. It made me sick. I wanted to wake her up, shake her until she told me the truth. But instead, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind running in circles. The next few days were unbearable. I couldn't look at her without seeing her in that parking lot, wrapped around another man. Every time she smiled at me, every time she kissed me goodbye, it felt like a slap in the face. I went through the motions, pretending nothing had changed, but inside, I was a mess. I had never felt so betrayed, so humiliated. And yet, I still wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I needed to gather more information, to understand the full scope of what had been happening. I logged into her phone account again, tracing every call, every message. The same number popped up over and over again, the Virginia area code. Whoever this guy was, he had been in her life for months, maybe longer. One night, when she was out again, I decided to take things a step further. I had her phone on my account, so I accessed her text messages remotely. My heart pounded as I scrolled through them, reading the exchanges between her and the man I now knew was named Tyler. They were filled with intimate details, plans for their next meeting, and even confessions of love. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of all the lies. The messages confirmed what I had suspected all along, this wasn't a one-time thing. This had been going on for months, maybe even a year. How could she do this to me? To our family? I sat there, in the dark, staring at the screen. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to destroy everything in sight. But instead, I felt numb. Cold. The person I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. That's when I decided it was time. I couldn't keep living like this. The anger was eating me alive, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. She thought she could sneak around behind my back, that I wouldn't find out, but she was wrong. I was going to make sure she paid for every lie, every secret she had kept from me. The next morning, I woke up early, while Katie was still asleep. I looked at her one last time, her face peaceful in the soft morning light. It was hard to believe that the woman lying beside me was the same person who had caused me so much pain. But this wasn't the time for sentimentality. I had a plan, and today was the day I was going to set it into motion. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed a cup of coffee, and sat at the table, my mind racing. There were so many things I wanted to say to her, so many ways I wanted to confront her. But I knew that whatever I said, whatever I did, it had to be cold, calculated, and devastating. I wasn't just going to leave her, I was going to break her. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that settles in when something is brewing just beneath the surface. It was Saturday morning, and I had decided that today was the day. No more waiting. No more pretending. Katie had spent the night out again, another late night with friends that I knew was anything but. I didn't even care about her lies anymore. I just wanted to see the look on her face when I laid it all out. I wasn't nervous. I had gone beyond that. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me as I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee and staring at the pictures on my phone, the ones I had taken of her and Tyler outside that motel. Each image was a bullet in the chamber, and I was ready to fire. Katie came home a little after 10 a.m., the sunlight streaming through the front windows as she stepped inside. She was wearing the same clothes from the night before, her hair slightly messy, her makeup smudged just enough to tell me everything I needed to know. She saw me sitting at the kitchen table, and for a moment, there was a flicker of guilt in her eyes, but she quickly covered it up with a smile. "Morning," she said, her voice a little too chipper for someone who had spent the night with another man. "Sorry I'm late. I ended up crashing at Jenna's place. We got carried away talking Anne." I raised my hand, cutting her off. "Don't," I said calmly. "Don't insult me by pretending anymore." Katie froze, her smile fading as she stared at me. "What are you talking about?" I pushed my phone across the table toward her, the screen still lit up with the photos I had taken. "You know exactly what I'm talking about." She hesitated for a moment before picking up the phone, her eyes widening as she scrolled through the images. The color drained from her face, and her hands started to shake. How did you, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms across my chest. "I followed you. I watched you meet him. I've been watching for weeks, actually. So go ahead, explain this. Tell me why you've been sneaking off to meet some guy at a motel while I've been here, holding our family together." Katie's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She looked like a fish gasping for air, her mind racing to come up with an excuse, an explanation that might save her from the truth. But there was nothing she could say. I had her, and she knew it. I can explain," she finally managed to say, her voice trembling. "It's not what it looks like, Mark. I swear. Not what it looks like." I repeated, my voice rising. "Katie, I have pictures of you kissing him. I've read your messages. I know everything. So don't stand there and lie to me. You've been cheating on me for months, haven't you?" Her eyes filled with tears, and she wiped them away with the back of her hand. "Yes," she whispered. "I've been seeing him, but it didn't mean anything. I swear, Mark, it was just a stupid mistake. I was lonely, and I didn't know how to fix things between us." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "A mistake? You've been seeing him for months, Katie. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." "I didn't want to hurt you," she sobbed. "I didn't know how to stop." "Well, you did hurt me," I said coldly. "You've been lying to my face, sneaking around behind my back. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Did you think you could just keep doing this forever?" She collapsed into the chair across from me, burying her face in her hands. "I'm so sorry," she cried. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I love you, Mark. Please believe me." I stared at her, feeling nothing but emptiness. The woman sitting in front of me wasn't the woman I thought I had married. I had spent over a decade building a life with her, trusting her, believing in her, and now it all felt like a lie. "Do you love him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Katie shook her head violently. No. No, it wasn't about love. It was just. I don't even know. He made me feel something I haven't felt in a long time. But it didn't mean anything, Mark. I swear. I leaned forward, my hands gripping the edge of the table. It didn't mean anything. I repeated, my voice full of anger. Do you have any idea what you've done? You've destroyed us. You've destroyed our family. How could you do this? Katie sobbed harder, but I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy for her. I had been faithful. I had been loyal. I had done everything right. And this was how she repaid me. I'm leaving, I said, standing up from the table. I'm done. Her head shot up, her eyes wide with panic. No, Mark, please. Don't do this. Don't leave. We can fix this. We can go to counseling, work things out. I'll do anything. Please, just don't go. I shook my head, my jaw clenched tight. There's nothing left to fix. You made your choice, Katie. Now you have to live with it. She stood up, rushing toward me, grabbing my arm. Please, don't do this, she begged. I'll stop seeing him. I'll do anything you want. Just please don't leave me. I pulled my arm out of her grasp, taking a step back. It's too late for that, I said coldly. You should have thought about that before you decided to sneak around behind my back. Katie collapsed onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. I stood there, staring down at her, feeling nothing but a hollow emptiness inside. This was the woman I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, and now she was nothing more than a stranger to me. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her there on the floor. I grabbed my car keys and headed for the front door. My mind was a storm of thoughts and emotions, but the one thing that stood out above all was the need to get out. I couldn't be in that house anymore, not with her. I needed space, time to think, time to figure out what came next. As I walked out to my car, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. It was done. There was no going back now. My marriage was over, and while part of me still couldn't believe it, another part of me felt relieved. The waiting, the suspicion, the lies, they were all behind me now. I had taken control, and for the first time in weeks, I felt free. I drove for hours, not really knowing where I was going, just needing to be away from her. I thought about everything that had happened, about how quickly my life had unraveled. It was hard to believe that just a few months ago, everything had seemed so normal, so stable. And now, here I was, my marriage in ruins, my heart shattered, my future uncertain. Eventually, I found myself parked by the lake where Katie and I had taken the kids last summer. The memory felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. I sat there for a long time, staring out at the water, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. How had I not seen this coming? How had I been so blind? But no matter how many times I asked myself those questions, I knew I wouldn't find any answers. The only thing that mattered now was what I did next. I sat by the lake for hours, watching the sun dip below the horizon, casting orange and pink hues across the water. The peaceful setting felt surreal compared to the chaos that had taken over my life. As I stared at the rippling water, a thought began to gnaw at me, something I hadn't let myself consider before. What if, despite everything, I had been wrong about how to handle this? What if I had been too quick to walk away? The anger that had driven me out of the house earlier had begun to fade, replaced by a deep, aching sadness. I wasn't just losing my wife. I was losing the life we had built together, the memories, the family, the dreams. In my fury, I hadn't considered what leaving Katie really meant. My children, our home, everything I knew would be shattered. I had acted on impulse, blinded by the betrayal. But now, as the stillness of the lake pressed in around me, I wasn't so sure anymore. I rubbed my hands over my face, trying to shake the thoughts. Maybe it was just the calm after the storm, the shock wearing off. Maybe I'd feel different in the morning. But a part of me, the part that had loved Katie for over a decade, felt an overwhelming sense of loss. What if there was something worth saving? I didn't want to go back, not after the way I'd stormed out, not after what I'd said. But the house felt like a loose end I couldn't leave untied. Katie's sobs echoed in my head, the way she had begged me not to go, to stay and try to fix things. I had been cold, too cold, and now I was starting to regret it. What if she really meant it? What if we could fix things? Before I knew it, I had turned the car around and started driving back home. The streets were quiet, the town already tucked in for the night. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as I neared the house. 100 thoughts rushed through my mind. Would she still be there? Would she even want to talk to me after what had happened? But deep down, I knew I had to try. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. I parked the car and sat there for a moment, staring at the front door. The light was on in the living room, but the rest of the house was quiet. I took a deep breath and got out, my legs feeling heavy as I walked toward the door. I stepped inside, the familiar smell of our home wrapping around me like a bittersweet memory. Everything looked the same, the pictures on the walls, the shoes by the door, but it felt different now, as if a line had been crossed that couldn't be undone. I called out softly, "Katie." No answer. The house was eerily silent, and a knot of unease tightened in my chest. I walked through the hallway, glancing into the kitchen. Empty. The living room was the same, quiet, dark, untouched. A sense of dread began to creep in as I made my way upstairs, my feet heavy with each step. The door to our bedroom was slightly ajar. I pushed it open slowly, my heart racing. Katie wasn't in bed. The covers were still pulled back from the morning, untouched since I had left. Panic started to rise in my throat. Where was she? I turned toward the bathroom, my pulse quickening. The door was closed, and a sliver of light peeked out from under it. "Katie." I called out, my voice shaking now. No response. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob, twisting it slowly. The door creaked open, and my heart stopped. Katie was there, lying on the bathroom floor, pale and still. For a moment, I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The scene before me was so wrong, so unimaginable, that my brain refused to process it. But then, reality crashed in all at once. I rushed to her side, my hands shaking as I reached for her, calling her name over and over again, but she didn't respond. There was an empty bottle of pills on the floor beside her, and I felt the world slip out from under me. My hands fumbled for her wrist, desperate to find a pulse, to feel any sign of life. But there was nothing. Her skin was cold. "No, no, no," I whispered, my voice breaking as tears blurred my vision. I shook her gently, begging her to wake up, to open her eyes, to tell me this wasn't real. But Katie was gone. I collapsed next to her, sobbing uncontrollably. How had it come to this? How had we gone from being a family, a couple with dreams, to this nightmare? I had left her in pieces, and now she was gone. I had pushed her away, and now it was too late to take any of it back. The weight of what I had done, what I hadn't done, pressed down on me like a crushing wave. I had been so blinded by my anger, my need for revenge, that I hadn't seen the depth of Katie's pain. I hadn't seen how much she was hurting, how desperate she must have been. And now she was gone, and there was no fixing it, no taking it back. I stayed there on the bathroom floor for what felt like hours, holding her lifeless body, sobbing until there were no more tears left. The silence of the house, once comforting, now felt like a prison. The guilt, the grief, it all consumed me. I had wanted revenge. I had wanted to break her. But in the end, I had broken us both. When the sun finally started to rise, its light creeping through the cracks in the curtains, I realized I had lost everything. Not just my wife, but the chance to fix what had been broken. I had let my anger guide me, and now the cost was more than I could bear. I looked down at Katie's still face, the woman I had once loved more than anything, and whispered, "I'm so sorry." But it was too late. Too late for apologies, too late for second chances. The sad truth was, I hadn't just lost Katie to her affair. I had lost her to the choices we had both made, the distance, the betrayal, the silence that grew between us until it was too much for either of us to bear. And now, as I sat alone on that cold bathroom floor, I realized that revenge had left me with nothing but sorrow. I had won the battle. But in the end, I had lost everything.